be your authentic self, and that will make your music more unique and just better. Because the more different voices we can hear in music, the better we all get. And that actually kind of goes for life too. Just like everybody's opinions matters. Like be yourself and respect how other people play music or their opinions too. Because it really informs all of us to become better ourselves.
Yeah. Hello, and welcome to the Orchestrating Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Rebekah, Becca for short, and I'm a clarinetist who studied at the Eastman School of Music and then went to London to get my master's and PhD, both at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. Having shifted pathways in my own life, I love hearing about the varied careers musicians can have and how they got there, and that's precisely what we're exploring in this podcast. As I sit down with music graduates to chat about their unique musical journeys, hear their hard-earned wisdom, and learn about how they're orchestrating their own careers. For today's episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with Emily Tsai, an oboist who did her undergraduate degree at the Eastman School of Music, then went to the University of Maryland School of Music to take part in their Woodwind Quintet Fellowship. She's now a member of WindSync, the assistant principal of the Washington National Opera, and is back at the University of Maryland School of Music, this time as their oboe professor. Emily talks about the value of connections and collaboration and the importance of being your authentic self. She also shares a lot of practical advice on audition preparation, how to practice, and so much more, so you may want to take notes. You're listening to Emily playing the Mozart Oboe Quartet under this intro, so stay tuned till the end of the episode to hear some more of this performance. And now, let's get right into the interview. Hello, Emily, and welcome to the Orchestrating Your Career podcast. It's wonderful to have you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And it's really cool to reconnect with you too, because I haven't seen you in ages.
Yes, since Eastman, right?
It's been a while.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So we met when we were both studying at the Eastman School of Music for our undergraduate degrees, which was a while ago.
Oh yeah, I mean, I graduated in 2011, and you were
a couple years
behind me. So yeah, that's a long time.
You've always been an incredibly talented oboist, and it's been amazing to see all of the things you've accomplished since Eastman. So
thank you.
I cannot wait to get into all of that. But before that, I want to go back to the very beginning, or at least your musical beginnings. But I think for you, those are almost one and the same, because you actually started playing the violin at the very early age of 4.
I did, yeah.
So could you share about how you got into music, why you started on violin, and how that then became oboe?
Right, okay. So I started on violin when I was 4, and it was mostly because my older sister played piano, and my parents are very into classical music, and so when it came time for me to pick an instrument at the ripe age of 4, they were like, you can play piano or you can play violin. Very Asian, I would say. And I wanted to be different from my sister, so I chose violin. And yeah, I just started right on the Suzuki method, that whole thing. And it was and my dad actually learned violin with me as I grew up, so that he could kind of help me at home. So yeah, it was actually really fun. And my sister and I eventually were able to play music together, because she would accompany me and that
that's
kind
a nice
of thing.
Combination.
It's awesome. And I'm very thankful for that now, and I didn't realize how lucky I was, So, and then as I grew up, I just kept playing violin, just taking private lessons. We moved around a lot, so I had a bunch of different teachers. But then when I was in middle school, at the band program, there wasn't an orchestra at my school, because it was very small.
Oh, interesting.
It was only a band program. And my sister, again, I copied my sister.
Yes.
So she did percussion, because she did the mallet instruments, very similar, the keys laid out like a piano. And I was like, I want to join the band, but I didn't play a band instrument. So my band teacher basically kind of tricked me into playing the oboe, because I didn't know what it was. And he was like, here's this reed, can you make a sound? And I was like, and then I made a sound naturally. And he's like, great, you're going to play this. And I was like, okay. So I literally
fell into it.
I had no idea. And he didn't tell me it was considered one of the more difficult instruments. He also didn't tell me that I'd eventually have to make my own reeds. So I do feel like I was a little tricked.
Yes.
But though, actually, I really liked it, started playing in the band and private lessons as well. And then I kept up both throughout high school, actually. And when it came time for college, I actually wanted to do a dual degree in violin and oboe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But my parents, the Asian culture, they're like, you need a backup just in case. Music is very like, you don't know,
Yeah.
So they wanted me to do like a biology degree as well. They wanted me to do pre-med, just,
Yes.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't think I could do 3 degrees.
Yeah.
So I had to choose between oboe and violin. And it was very difficult because I love violin and I still actually love violin. I still play sometimes. I actually taught violin for a long time up until recently because I just got too busy. But I chose oboe because I was like, well, it was a more unique instrument. And there's so many good violinists out there.
Yeah.
So I actually, when I said goodbye not goodbye, but like when I knew I wasn't going to major in violin, that was my junior year of high school. And I did one last hurrah at my violin. I went to Interlochen summer camp
on violin.
Wow. Yeah. And playing in like what's it called? Like the World Youth Symphony or whatever. It was really cool though, like on violin. But I took my oboe and I took lessons while I was there too.
Wow.
But that was my last big like violin thing. And I actually met some people who went to Eastman afterward, like at that Interlochen thing. But when I saw them at Eastman, they were like, wait, what? You play oboe? So it was kind of like and like I said, I love violin. I still kept playing it, even though I didn't take lessons anymore. But at Eastman, I actually played in a lot of people's recitals on violin. Especially when players, they knew I played violin, so they were like, hey, can you play in this? Play in this? And I was just so eager to like collaborate with people that I was like, yes. So I played on lots of recitals on violin. And then when it came time for my senior recital, I actually like cashed in all my favors and I was like, hey, can you play on my recital? Because I put together a 40-piece orchestra to play the Corgliano Oboe Concerto for my senior recital. And I was like, I can't just do a piano. There's like this whole like play of tuning the orchestra thing. Yes. And I was like, it's got to be with an orchestra. So yeah. So I like asked all my friends and all the people I played on their recitals. I was like, you play on mine.
Amazing.
So yeah. And but the aspect of collaboration was like really awesome to me.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of chamber music. I did chamber music every semester. And this was all while I was doing the dual degree. So I basically I had like no social life. Like it was a lot. And I did not do pre-med. I did ecology and evolutionary biology because I was just like, I like animals,
and that
I'll do
was
that.
at the University of Rochester.
That was in Rochester. Yeah. So that was like how I kind of morphed from violin to oboe, but still kept violin.
Wow, I hadn't realized violin was like so important up to so late.
Yeah.
Like even up to your junior year. But then you did all your auditions for oboe.
Just oboe.
At that point.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
I actually started on violin as well.
You did?
I did.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But I picked clarinet. My parents had me make the decision between clarinet.
It's
and
similar,
violin, so,
yeah.
Aww. That's really cool. I would love to go back a tiny bit.
Sure.
And just hear a little bit more then about how you sort of decided on Eastman and that process of auditioning for schools. And then you were saying that you had to do this other major, how that kind of factored in as well.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So I auditioned for like 11 schools or something. Yeah. It was a lot. But I was specifically looking at schools that had really good dual degree programs. So, I got into, all these whatever music schools. But the ones that stood out, of course, were Eastman and Rochester, and then Peabody Johns Hopkins.
Yes.
And I know.
Were you thinking pre-med at that time?
I was thinking pre-med at the time. And then, of course, like there were some New York schools that also have like a dual degree thing with Columbia. Like it's not like the same school, so it was like a more complicated setup. But the main factor is, of course, I went to take some lessons with the teachers. And I think that's the most important thing to do when you're looking for where you're going to study is take a lesson with your teacher or future teacher, because sometimes you find out that even if it's a great school and you don't get along with the teacher, like you're not going to get hardly enough, everything you could get out of at maybe a lesser known school, but a really like you jive with the teacher, like you would thrive way more there.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, Eastman's a great, well-known school. And so I was lucky. I took a lesson with Mr. Killmer and I actually got caught in a snowstorm on the way there.
As you do in Rochester.
Yes. So my mom and I were actually stuck on the highway south of Buffalo for like 12 hours.
Oh my gosh.
In the snow. And it was like, and I called Mr. Killmer. I was like, I'm going to miss my lesson. And he was like, oh, don't worry. I'll keep the school up until midnight if you have, like, don't worry. You just come whenever. And I was like, oh my goodness. Cause he's so like famous. Yeah. And I'm this nobody from Indiana. Yeah. Like I was living in Indiana at the time. How is he so nice? And like, I went to the lesson, like, of course, very late. I had like just enough time to take a shower and then like go to the lesson. So I was kind of like, but we had a great lesson. And, you know, and he was like, if you work on these things, you have a very good chance of getting in. And I was like, really? So I went back and I was just like, I got to like, that inspired me to like really practice. And I took lessons with some other teachers too. And they're all like, I had great experiences, but he was like, special.
Stood out, yeah.
So my goal was like, I want to go to Eastman. And so, yeah. So when I was accepted, it was just like, it was no,
you knew.
Yeah, I knew. I was just like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about anything else. I'm going to Eastman, you know, because he just had that I had a special connection with him.
Yeah.
And he has that with all his students, honestly. And then for me specifically though, even during my time at Eastman, he encouraged my dual degree. And a lot of music teachers don't, I know, because they're like, you have to concentrate on, you know, you have to and I see why, because I didn't have enough, like I didn't have the time that other people did to practice. Yeah. Which is kind of like, you know, because that's the time where you do want to practice when you're in school. But he was very much of the mindset that you're gaining experience no matter what, like life experience, which is arguably as helpful or more helpful than sitting in a practice room by yourself. Yeah. So I learned how to be very efficient at practicing, and reed making and all that, and like, and also doing all the biology courses and labs and whatever. And there were only a couple times during my 4 years that had some conflicts. But other than that, I like tried very hard to keep up with everybody else, even though I had less time. And Mr. Killmer would, of course, be, you know, he would tell me if I was like just slipping a little bit. He'd be like, you really need to work. And I was like, I know. But he knew what I was doing, because he's also such, you know, he does all sorts of stuff. And like he plays the cello and he plays the saxophone and stuff. And so he loved that I played violin. Yeah. And on my senior recital too, for my encore, we played the Mendelssohn Piano Trio. He played cello, I played violin, and Trevor Mowry, don't remember him. He played piano. Amazing. So we were called the secondary trio. But and I also took I was also interested in like other things too besides my majors. So I took gamelan, and and then I also took French horn actually for 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so just for fun, and because my dad played horn, and so he had one, and I was like, hey Dad, can I have your horn? And he was like, sure. Wow. And again, some oboe teachers or wind teachers would be like, oh, Mr. your embouchure, but he was like, no, go for it, like experience everything. Yeah. And I was like, this is so great. And so it actually made me think more about my embouchure because of how different it was for horn versus oboe. Yeah. And this is totally a side note, you can cut this. No, but like, so my horn jury was right after my senior recital, like the day after. Oh my God. So, and I had asked Trevor to accompany me on my horn jury as well, because I thought it would be funny. And I played the first Mozart horn concerto for my jury. And poor Trevor, had practiced so hard on the Mendelssohn that he didn't practice the Mozart. Oh no. So when we got to the horn jury, he totally bombed. Like totally bombed. At one point he was literally like playing one note with one finger. And it made me crack up so hard. And as brass players know, if you're laughing while you're playing, you crack every single, so every note I played was a crack. And I went up to my teacher after and I was like, I'm so sorry. And she was like, you know, you weren't even the worst one today. I was like, oh, okay. She gave me an A. It was great. Wow. But it was also the day after my recital, so I was also like brain dead.
Yes, of course.
Anyway, so that's a little side story. But
love side stories.
But the whole point of that is that Mr. Killmer was so encouraging of you as a person, not just you as an oboist. Yeah. And that is inspiring to me even today. So yeah.
I love that. That's really important. And I think especially in an environment at schools like Eastman and like these really high performing institutions, it can be so easy to just, drill down into just one thing and like just focusing on performance. And so I love that you were able to explore all of these different interests and, just capitalize on all the opportunities you had when you were there.
Right. I think like for any advice for, building your careers from when you're a student is that is when you're in school, you have so many resources that you will not have when you graduate.
Yeah.
Like when you graduate, you're like, oh, man, everything's expensive. You know. But when you're in school, you can do so many cool things and collaborate with all sorts of different people and have all these like access to programs and software and recordings and whatever. Yeah. And you need to take advantage of that when you're in school, because then those connections that you make in school also will help you down the line in your professional career. I mean, like, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but I mean, we, in my quintet, have commissioned music from fellow Eastman alums, because, like composing new music for us because of our connections from school. So you want to start, it's not like you have to go and like, I'm going to network. No, you just, make yourself available for all sorts of experiences.
Yeah, and keep in mind like that these people will be your colleagues.
They will.
So
like us.
Yes.
There you
go. Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. I would love to just dig a little more into, you're doing all of these things at Eastman and you talked a little bit about like you became very efficient with your time.
Yes.
Could you just expand on that a little bit? Like what did that look like in practice and how did you sort of balance all these different pieces?
Yes. Okay. So efficiency practicing, basically. Yes. So but it's also beyond practicing. It's efficiency with your schedule.
Yeah.
And maintaining not strict, but like a calendar.
Yeah.
Because I know that now that I've been teaching, other younger people now, I realize that one of the things that young people kind of lack, I feel so old. Young people lack, is managing your time.
Yes.
And it's kind of the biggest life skill you should learn as early as possible. Because that, more than anything else, will help you do whatever you want, like in your career.
Yeah.
So maintaining your calendar, sticking to your calendar, and if you make appointments or rehearsals or whatever with other people, making sure to be early, like, to those things and not make anyone wait on you. Because I think that, like, it's really important to build your reputation as someone who is reliable. Yeah. And like, oh, it's such a great experience. They were always there on time. They were always prepared, blah, blah, blah. That is one thing, just like a life skill. Yeah. The other thing about specifically practicing is there were weeks at Eastman, I would practice literally 15 minutes every 3 days because I had no time. Like, and it wasn't that I was goofing off or around. I was doing homework. I was doing labs, I was doing rehearsals and stuff. So my practice time sometimes got pushed to the side, which is unfortunate. But if I had those really short amount of times, like, don't think, oh, it's only 15 minutes. It's not even worth getting my instrument out. No, like, you can do really concentrated, like, I'm going to do this scale study for 15 minutes. Work on the fundamentals. And even that concentrated 15 minutes is really helpful to you. And then when you have other times, like throughout the day, you can do 15 minutes, it doesn't have to be a big, long chunk of time. Because actually, if you do a long period of time of practicing, you're physically not being able to focus as well. Yeah. Eventually. Yeah. So it is good to break it up. And then the biggest thing is just like turn your phone off. Like don't have it anywhere near you because it's so distracting.
Especially today. I can't imagine like dealing with the distractions of today when
it's tough. And like, there's so many good things that you can do with technology, like with your metronome and your recording and stuff like that. But there's something to be said about pure concentrated, like this, Focus. And also not to just bop around from different pieces that you're working on. Like that to me, I mean, some people do that and that's fine. For me, I'm more like, I really want to like focus in on one thing and this limited amount of time and get that set. I will worry about the other things later. And so once you get that mindset and you really concentrate on that and you really pick apart and put it back together, you really get good at that. Yeah. And so trying to be like, I have so much repertoire, I have to learn, like, like do snippets of this and this, that's not really efficient in terms of you retaining anything afterward.
Yeah.
Rather, split it up and be like, I'm specifically going to do this for this 15 minutes, and I'm going to do that later at this 15 minutes. And again, maintaining your calendar, putting in these, I keep saying 15 minutes, hopefully it's a little longer, like 30 minutes, an hour even. Yeah. Like, you kind of schedule out what you're going to practice. Yeah. Not just be like, here's my practice time, I'm just going to play whatever.
Yeah. Be really intentional.
Be very intentional, and because some people do have the luxury of like, I have all this time, you know. And if you do and you're a student at school, and you have the time, yes, use it. But if you don't, especially when you get into the professional world, you've got to really plan it out. So sometimes I would literally write in my calendar, practice the poulenc, you know, practice the blah, blah, you know, whatever, like specific pieces. Yeah. And I usually break it up into fundamentals, long tones, of course, scales, arpeggios, tonguing exercises, you know, those kind of things as one thing. Yeah. Etudes as another thing, and then solo rep as another thing, and orchestral as another thing, especially when you're preparing for auditions. Those orchestral excerpts need to have their own, like no distractions from
targeted time.
Yes, targeted time. And even if you want to get even more anal, because I'm an oboist, I'm super anal, you can even section out, I'm going to do 10 minutes on this excerpt, 15 minutes on this, and then go through and then be like, okay, that's it. Then the next time you go through, you can cycle through them again. Yeah. Because if you kind of, like I said, if you bop around too much with the excerpts, what are you retaining? Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah. But everybody has a different style. Like, obviously, this isn't the cure-all for anything. You got to find what works for you. For me, that is what worked. Just being very intentional.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times you can feel like, oh, I just have this block to practice, so I'm just going to jump in and do whatever I feel is top priority. But actually, like, taking that, you know, a few minutes beforehand and sort of planning out, like, I'm going to intentionally hit these excerpts and spend this amount of time, then that can help your practice be a lot more effective.
Totally.
So I think that's so important.
And my other big thing is don't skip the fundamentals, because especially when you're a student, like, you do, as good as you are, you probably do not have all your fundamentals figured out. So if you're skipping that to be like, well, I have to do the rep. No. Like, those days when I only had the 15 minutes every 3 days, what I would practice is my fundamentals. Because that you're building your foundation. Yeah. And if you have that solid foundation and you really understand your instrument, that's the way it becomes a part of you. And then later on when you play music, it's so much easier because you can do anything the music requires you. Yeah. If you skip the fundamentals and just try to, you know, hammer it home in the music, sometimes you just like, I don't get it. I don't understand why I can't do this. And it's because you didn't build your foundation, you know? And so, like, don't, as boring as it is, don't skip the fundamentals. Do your long tones, do all those other things, and record yourself. Listen back to yourself. I think that now with this technology that we have, it's so easy to record yourself. Back in my day, it was a lot harder, you know? But those opportunities to record is so helpful. Yes. And you also are developing your ear as a musician, not just your technique, because you need to develop your ear. I always have my students, it's from the pandemic, like, of course they had to record things and whatever, but even after, I'm like, that's really helpful. They record, we listen to it together. I ask them what they think of their recording. And so they're starting to listen more intentionally. Yes. And they're learning. Then when they practice, oh, I'm hearing that, I can fix it on my own, versus having to wait for your teacher to tell you, you know, you're doing that, you know. Yes. So recording and listening is so helpful.
Wow. I feel like we just had a masterclass in how to practice.
Yes, that's right.
True teacher.
Yeah, no, I mean, these are just the things that I've, you know, thought are the, like, there's so many other really good things and techniques that you can incorporate into your practice, but these are the things for me that I've observed really stand out and really help. Yeah. And it's just really awesome because a lot of young people don't think about these other things. They're just like, I need to learn the notes on the page. Yeah. No, that's not that shouldn't be the goal. So anyway,
No, amazing. I love it. Yeah. And I think it's really cool to hear sort of how you've transitioned from your student days to like now teaching and being able to take sort of all of that experience and incorporating it into how you're able to then teach and like pass that on.
Right.
So
yeah.
Hopefully. Definitely. I would love to hear about transitioning then from your time at Eastman into your master's degree. First, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your mindset and like what your idea of what would come after Eastman was when you're doing your undergrad.
Right.
And then how that directed your, thought process on like, am I going to do a master's? What comes next? And then how you chose where you're going to study.
So I always knew I wanted to do a master's in music. And actually, that was the other thing with my family, like in my dual degree. My goal was to be able to get into a master's program where I could only do music and not have to do another degree. And my goal for that was like I would be financially independent. So if I could get into a program that gave me a scholarship, then I was like, then I know that I have a shot, and this is just my own personal goal because, my parents were like, gotta get that pre-med. And like, again, I didn't do the pre-med. So my whole thing at Eastman was like, yes, I do want to further my education. Some people dive right into a professional career right after their undergrad, and that's fantastic. But I would say the vast majority do not. So doing a master's is really great because it's a performance degree. Like a doctorate is more of a pedagogy, academic degree. But a master's really is the time, like you have the fundamentals from the 4 years in college. Now is your time to really develop yourself as an artist and finding your own unique voice. And then at Eastman, I was doing all these things. One of the things I loved the most was, again, collaborating with people, chamber music. And then, of course, my senior recital with the orchestra. I actually graduated with the Chamber Music Award from Eastman. And so that and Killmer was kind of hinting to me, like, chamber music is really, it's an alternative kind of career, but you have a really natural way about you, affinity for chamber music. And I was like, because I'd never thought of that before. I was like, I'm going to do it orchestral, I'm going to win an audition and it'll be great. And I was like, chamber music is actually more fun for me. I love orchestra, don't get me wrong, but there's the freedom about chamber music. And so the University of Maryland had a fellowship chamber woodwind quintet. And I was actually the very first year that they had it available. And it was amazing. Full tuition plus a really generous stipend. And I was like, that.
How did you even hear about it if it was the first year?
Killmer. Yeah, because Mark Hill, my teacher at Maryland, knows Killmer. Everybody knows everybody, right? So, but they were sending, Maryland did a really good job of sending out the information because when I came to audition, there were a lot of people who auditioned for it. There were pre-formed groups and there were also individuals. I was an individual. But I was like, this is perfect because I can still work towards my orchestral career or whatever, but I can be financially independent and I can also do what I really love, which is chamber music. Yeah. And so I was lucky enough to win that audition. And so I got thrown into just, intensive woodwind quintet at Maryland. And it was really great. I didn't really know the other people. I knew one of the other persons in the quintet because he went to Eastman with us, Matt Gray, horn player. But the others I didn't know. So it was also just a life lesson about learning how to interact with other people on a very intimate level when you have no background with them at all. So it was very interesting to learn that. And also we went through so much repertoire. We got coachings with so many of the faculty at Maryland, which is awesome because, usually you have your student ensemble, you have one coach through a semester. But for us, we were so lucky. We got to take coachings from basically any faculty member we wanted. And we took full advantage of that. We even had a coaching from the trumpet professor, and he's amazing. Chris Gecker is and he's an encyclopedic brain. So he doesn't know the rep necessarily that we're playing, but he was in the American Brass Quintet. So his chamber music, and everything he said was wow, And then of course, Sue Heineman, the principal bassoonist of the NSO, was on faculty. So getting to work with her. Of course, my teacher, Mark Hill, he has extensive chamber music background. And we got to collaborate with some of the string faculty and the vocal faculty as well. And they even sent us to Italy over the summer. You know, it was such a cool experience. And it's so interesting now because now they've had quite a few other quintets that after mine. And it's kind of cool to see how the program has evolved because we were kind of guinea pigs, you know.
Of course,
but it was such a great experience. And Mark Hill was fantastic teacher, just like really musical, like focusing on the music. And that's why I said, like, that's where I really developed my artistry. Because I was mature enough and I had the foundation enough to do that. Because I will say, I mean, I was pretty good. I got into Eastman when I was a freshman or whatever, but like, I was not ready to really develop myself as an artist. You know, as good as you think you are, you've got lots to learn. And so at Maryland, I was able to express myself more as a individual. So that was kind of how it pushed me into going to Maryland for my master's. I auditioned at a few other places too, but that was like
a clear,
like that was just like, if I got that, of course I'd go there, you know? And that's what brought me to the DC area. So.
Wow. It's really interesting to hear how the beginnings of sort of a different pathway for you were coming out even at Eastman, and like this chamber music as a possibility. I remember feeling the same way at Eastman, the beginnings of like, oh, there's other things that we could be doing with music other than just the traditional orchestral pathway that I feel like what most students go into conservatoire thinking about. So it's amazing that you're sort of, that thought was already percolating, and then you're like able to just dive right into it.
I mean, and a lot of that was due to Mr. Killmer. Because he has a really good knack of seeing like, you should do this, you know, and us being like, wait, never thought of that.
I didn't even know that.
I didn't even know. Yeah, exactly. Aww. So like I said from the very beginning, take lessons with the potential teachers, because you could have an experience like that. Or you could have a good experience, but not as, you know, everything is very personal. But yeah, it was so cool to be like, there's more to music than just playing in an orchestra. And having your own artistic freedom to choose what you play, to collaborate with, you know, that opens up so many doors to do really cool projects. I will say it's very hard. It's a very difficult career. Like if you go and win an audition and play in an orchestra, like it's already set for you. You don't have to do so much other than just keep your, you know, your technique and your practicing and whatever. But when you're an entrepreneurial career, like you have to really put yourself out there, be always creatively thinking of different projects, different people you want to collaborate with, etc. And so that's one thing that it's a lot of work, like I said. And honestly, it's not a ton of money, but it's so creatively fulfilling. And so, most people, and I would say most, because I would almost say everybody in chamber music does it because it's their passion. And it's not because they're raking in the money. It's not that. So it's definitely a thing of passion. For sure.
So when you were at Maryland, did you feel this was going to be your career then? Like, I'm going to go the chamber music on more entrepreneurial route?
So I wasn't completely set that way. But I was still taking orchestral auditions. I won like a few smaller regional orchestra jobs. You know,
when you were still studying.
When I was still studying, at Maryland, and so that was I was starting to get my professional orchestral chops as well. And then, but I was always doing a lot of chamber music. So after Maryland, I stayed in the area because I actually met my husband here while I was a student, and so I kind of stayed in the area partially because things were getting serious with him, and then also because I just liked this area. And I just started getting plugged into different opportunities in the area. Like Mark Hill, again, wonderful connection, just that, you know, he helped me get some like chamber music opportunities, gigging in the area, freelancing. He helped me start my career here because he was so well connected. I also joined the Musicians Union. You know, they have a showcase that they do twice a year, I believe. And so if anybody's like, I don't know how to like get plugged in, like look at your local union. You can do a showcase. A lot of presenters or contractors, I should say, go to those showcases. And if they like you, you can talk to them afterward and they can get your contact and stuff. And that's actually how I started freelancing around here. Is by doing that. And then also I joined, getting teaching as well, like just kind of emailing schools, putting myself up on like a website. I think it's called Music 123. It's been a long time. I don't even know if that website's still there. But then also as you're gigging with other people in the area, you just start to make connections.
Of course, yeah.
And again, it comes back to being consistent, being professional. If you are someone they like to play with and are like, they're always on time, they're so friendly, they play well, like it's really a joy, they will get you other opportunities to play. So that's kind of how that started. But I was already doing chamber music. I played with a guitarist, an oboe guitar duo. I got plugged in with a local wind quintet here, Patagonia Winds. And so I started playing a lot of chamber music with them in the area. But all at the same time, I was still traveling out to the orchestras that I had, I was a member of. But then I was also subbing in New World at the time too. So actually, while I was down in New World, that's whenever I had my interview for WindSync. So I was already kind of known as more of a chamber music person. And so actually when WindSync needed to get a new oboist, the previous oboist was also an Eastman alum actually, but we didn't cross paths because she graduated the year right before I got there. And her name is Tsai, and my name is Emily Tsai. So actually, I got her mail when we were at Eastman, and so that's how I reached out to her on Facebook, and I was like, "Hey, I have your mail," and that's actually how we met is on Facebook. And a lot of the professors at Eastman called me Erin. Yeah. So anyway, that's how she knew of me. Yeah. But also, she talked to Killmer just whenever WindSync was because. In a chamber group, they're not going to have like a nationwide audition. Like, no, like there's so many good players out there, but you want the player to be a chamber musician, not just like a player, So really looking for people like to recommend or through our network when we're looking for a new member. So Erin talked to Mr. Killmer, and Kilmer's like, Emily. And so that's how they discovered me. And so there was a whole audition process. And while I was at New World, that was when my interview happened. Because again, in chamber music, a lot of it was about matching personalities as well. Because it can be a disaster if not the right personalities. So that's kind of when I was like, oh, wow, this could be like that's whenever I was like, I could do a career in chamber music. And I kind of stopped being as interested in taking orchestral auditions. And so I went down to Houston because WindSync is based in Houston for my audition. And it went really well. And then a few weeks later, they were like, we want to hire you. Yeah, they offered me the job. And I was like, yes. And so I was like, because I hate auditions. So I was like, I'll never have to take another audition again. So like, yeah, and now I'm approaching my 9th season with WindSync. Wow. Yeah, and WindSync is actually...
Is a season a year? Or?
Yeah, like from fall to spring. That's a season. And WindSync is actually approaching its 15th season. Wow. So it's my 9th, it's their 5th, the group's 15th. Gosh. And so it's been really it's been awesome. Like we tour about 100+ days a year. Wow. So it's a lot. We're... Like, not many wind quintets are on the touring circuit. It's mostly string quartets, piano trios, So we're often the only non-string / piano on a concert series. And we memorize everything, which is a lot. But we are very, everybody is we buy into the product that we're putting forth. So it's really cool to be working so closely with such like-minded, high-level chamber musicians. And then I've been doing that for 9 years, and gosh, yeah, it's crazy. I know.
Could you sort of? I'm trying to get the timeline in my head.
Yes,
when these things are happening. So you graduated, and then you were sort of doing all of these things.
Freelancing. Yeah, I was doing my orchestra jobs,
and then WindSync happened. How long after graduating?
Actually, not that
Soon
long.
after.
I actually also did a development internship at Wolf Trap during that time as well.
Wow, cool.
Because again, I was kind of like, oh, you know, being an entrepreneur, you kind of want to learn how things work behind the scenes, arts administration.
Yes, yeah.
And development is very important, like trying to fund your projects and everything, right? So I did that internship at Wolf Trap, which was very informative and helpful to my career as a chamber musician. But that was about a year. And then after that, actually Wolf Trap wanted to hire me on, and I was like, no, because I didn't want to just sit at a computer,
right.
you know, like, but it was such a great experience.
Yeah.
But then it was basically a year and a half.
Okay.
And then I so I graduated from Maryland in 2013. And then I auditioned for WindSync in 2015. Okay, so I guess maybe like 2-ish years.
Okay.
Yeah, as I joined them in 2015.
Okay.
In the fall. And I auditioned in the spring.
Makes sense.
So I guess it was about 2 years where I was like freelancing and starting to get my feet into the professional world.
Yeah.
And like I said, when you're in the professional world, you're not in school, you have way less time than you think. Like if you're like, I'm so busy at school. No. You are way more busy when you're a professional, because you don't have a cushy like, well, I'm at school. No, you have to, there's bills to pay. You got to hustle, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it was a very informative 2 years after graduating.
And it sounds like you were really hustling. Like it sounds like you were doing all kinds of different things and like just taking advantage of whatever you could sort of get into. And I wonder if you could talk just a little bit more about that transition period. It feels, sort of the way you talk about it, it feels pretty gradual and almost sort of like coming out of Maryland, but could you just
actually maybe I guess I don't think it was super gradual. It was actually, and I was lucky because again, Mark Hill, you know, it really helped me. Because again, that connection with your teacher is so important. But he really helped me connect with like the guitarist. And then even the wind quintet, I think also as well that I started playing with. So he already started just getting me chamber music gigs. And then he also was the one that told me about the union and all that. And so I did that very early on. I started getting gigs like right away. And then like I said, I was also still traveling to those orchestras that I had won the positions for in New World. So it was all actually like right away.
I meant gradual, more like it sounds like you were doing some of these things before you even graduated.
Oh yes.
So I meant more like that you were already sort of taking these professional steps before you even
actually yes, sorry, I misunderstood.
No
That's good because like we talked about earlier, like when you're a student you have more time than you think, so you might as well invest that in starting to become professional, especially if you're in a graduate degree, because when you're an undergrad, like just practice, like do your thing. But when you're a master's student, like you can start to develop your professional career even while you're a student. Yes, I would say it was at the same time. Most of like the chamber music stuff happened after I graduated, but like the orchestral, taking out auditions and whatever, those was during while I was still a student. And starting to gig freelance was also while I was still a student as well.
So did you sort of have this, I'm just wondering if you had a moment where it was like you graduated and you're like, now I'm in the real world. How am I making money? How am I paying the bills? How am I getting this career started?
Yeah, so when I graduated from Maryland, I was like, the first thing was, doing a budget, basically. Like, we don't get taught that in music school, like finances and whatever, but like life skills. You should keep track of your finances. Making a spreadsheet is all you need to do. And just tracking how much you spend versus how much you make. And so, yes, and finding a place to live that is safe, but affordable. And so having roommates. So I had roommates for a couple years, and it was great, actually. Because they were also musicians, like it was awesome. Like we would just talk about what we're all doing and like helping each other out. And so having roommates can be really, really great. But then at one point I was like, no, I want to have my own place. And then you have to work really hard to get yourself financially there to do that. So there was this moment where like, okay, plan everything out. And you have to live, like very modestly for a while, but like, it's just a good habit to have anyway. But yeah.
So were you working part-time for Wolf Trap and then gigging and doing all these things, and that was all sort of coming together to be your income?
Exactly. Yeah. We call it the portfolio career, right? That's the buzzword now. Right. So yeah, doing all the other thing is just when you're young, and this is the Killmerism, he was like, say yes and then figure it out later. You know, like just say yes. Yeah. Like don't double book yourself, of course, but like, for instance, he gave an example like, oh, you want to do the Bach B minor mass or something. Oh, there's d'amore, oboe d'amore in it. You don't have an oboe d'amore. Just say yes.
And you'll
figure it out later. Like reach out to your and like I actually have like I borrowed d'amores from Mark Hill and you know and I got reeds from Killmer. You know, like you say yes and then figure it out later. And because you want to be known as that person that's like yes, eager to because sometimes unfortunately in freelancing, sometimes if a contractor is asking you and you say no enough times, they'll stop asking you. Yeah. So you got to try and really make sure that you work hard when you're young. And then you can kind of taper it off later. Because I'm at that point now where I'm trying to taper other things off because there are other things that are, it's a lot.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you got there. Okay. So you were saying that when you won the WindSync, you almost thought like, this is my last audition.
Yes.
So how did you get from that to where you are now?
Okay, so for WindSync, like, it was wonderful. I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved it, and I love it still. I'm still doing WindSync. But it was a lot of time and commitment. And like I said, not a ton of money and livable. I still supplemented all the time I was in WindSync. I still was freelancing here. I was still teaching in the DC area. I gave up those regional orchestras that I was playing in because I just couldn't make the schedules work. But traveling with WindSync has been amazing. I've been to all 50 states because of WindSync. Wow. I mean, partially because of WindSync. And then I've been to, for my personal travels plus WindSync, I've also been to over 25 countries as well. So it's amazing to experience that. Yeah. But as I got older, I got married, I got a house, here. The traveling is very taxing. And so one thing that I kind of wanted to do was try and balance WindSync and like hustling and teaching and all that. I was so busy here and so busy on tour. I was just kind of like, I'd like to maybe simplify my life a little bit. And I wasn't really planning on taking any auditions really. But the Washington National Opera audition came up. And I'm already living in DC. Yeah. I was subbing with them actually from their previous season. And everybody was like, you need to take our audition. And I was like, okay. So I actually really wasn't planning on taking that audition, except it was in town. And then my husband was like, you're going to regret, like, you should just do it. Like, what harm could it be? Yeah. And so I hadn't taken an audition in like 6-7 years or something. So I was like, wow, I'm rusty on my audition shop. And also the repertoire, because it's opera, is different than normal orchestra. So I wasn't familiar with a lot of the pieces. So it's kind of starting from scratch. But in a way that's good, because you don't have those preconceived, like I have to play it like this, you know. You can actually just, because you're older too, as I'm older too, I could, again, put my artistry, my own spin on things, because I have developed to that enough to do that. And so it was actually kind of fun and interesting preparing that audition.
Can you talk about the preparation process? Like, when did you start it, and what did it look like for you?
Yeah, so I got the music right away, like as soon as I could. And I think
how far
that was
they
provided it. So the audition was in summer. Okay. And they provided music, I think 3 months. Yeah. I think it was 3. I can't exactly remember. Around about, yeah. So you get the music right away. You get the list. Organize your list. I have my iPad now, so I just make a set list and just boom, 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 everything in order. Because you don't want to be wasting time being like, where's that excerpt? And then I also made an audio playlist of all of the excerpts as well, with timestamps specifically for those sections leading up to the excerpt and because you want to know what's going on. Because one thing I hate about auditions is that you're just so alone. You feel so naked because nobody's behind. Like, it's not how that piece of music is supposed to be played.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be played with the context of the orchestra.
Yeah.
So you need to convince the audition panel
that know it.
That you know what it is, but also you play it so that they hear it when you're playing. They hear the orchestra behind you. So the only way to do that is to get knowledge of the score and listen to the recordings. So make your audio playlist, make your music playlist. Then, luckily, I had kind of a chaotic schedule because of my touring with WindSync. But when I was home, and also we had some breaks because in the early summer before the audition, WindSync's season had finished. So I had a time period of about a month where I could have really consistent scheduling of practicing. I was teaching at a festival in Memphis, actually. And I would get up at 6 a.m. every morning and go to the festival early and just practice for 2 hours before the festival. And I did that every single day for 2 straight weeks.
Wow.
Because I was teaching at that festival at the time. And the festival actually gave me this really nice structure because that was the time that I needed to practice. And to have that same time every day, and then you do the rest of your day, I think that more than anything really helped me mentally on how to practice and prepare these excerpts.
Yeah.
So consistent practicing. Now it's tough to do that because again, schedules can be chaotic.
Yeah.
But if you can, leading up to an audition, try and find some, like I said, I was still teaching at a festival. So it was very busy, but you have to find those times.
Yeah.
Like if you really want to win, wake up at 6 a.m. Just do it. And then recording myself. Mock auditions. Great thing to do.
Did you do those live with people at the festival?
Yeah, the other faculty at the festival, I was like, hey, can you listen to this?
Yeah.
And they would give me feedback. I mean, it was just really nice. And even playing it just for my husband too.
Yeah.
Because he plays violin. He also has perfect pitch and I don't.
Wow.
I know. I'm like, all right, you have it and I don't. So he has a really good ear. But even just somebody who isn't as familiar with music.
Right.
They can tell. They can be like, that sounded kind of weird, and awkward.
Yeah.
And actually, I played for some non-musicians, and they're like, yeah, when you took that breath, I felt like it kind of interrupted, and I was like, huh, listening back. They don't know anything about music, but they were just like, it kind of seemed a little awkward, and I was like, you're right. And so I was refiguring my breaths and stuff. So just playing for as many people, no matter if they're musicians, no matter whatever, if they're willing to listen to you, you can get that experience. Get the adrenaline going. And then when you go and take the audition, don't have the mindset this is the be all end all I need to win. Because I was like, I don't need to win this. I love playing in WindSync. I have that. It's fine.
Yeah.
If I win it, great. The other reason why I took this audition is because it's the only orchestra that I thought could pair with the WindSync schedule because the opera does not play every single week.
Right.
So I was just very casual. I was just if you care so much about it, then that often locks you up in an audition.
Yeah.
There are plenty of auditions out there. I mean, not plenty, but there are other auditions out there and there are other things you can do with your career. You don't have to put so much weight on any single audition. Because then you go in and you are so much more relaxed.
Yeah.
And so I played, I wasn't even expecting to get past the first round because I was I hadn't taken auditions so long. I was just there's so many. I was listening to other people warm up. I was like, this sounds so good. And I'm just whatever. And then I just went in and I'm just going to be myself.
Yeah.
I would suggest not to be too crazy in your interpretations of things in the first round of an audition. Because that's when they listen to everybody.
Yeah.
And they could nix you for anything.
Yeah.
So just be slightly, still put your own spin on things, but maybe a little bit more conservatively.
Yeah.
Because you just want to show up in the first round as being a solid player.
Yeah.
Rhythm, intonation, your tempos, your articulations, the fundamentals.
Yeah.
That's what they're listening for in a first round.
Yeah.
Then when you get to the other rounds, then you can start to show off a little bit more, especially the final round. And this audition, all 3 rounds were completely blind.
Okay. And they were all the same day?
No. So the first round was one day. This next day was the semis and the finals.
Okay.
But like I said, in the first round, be that really just solid. Don't play like a machine, but be solid. Second round, start showing your stuff. In the last round, that's when they asked for the concerto. And I played Mozart concerto with a pianist. And it's actually, funny story. The semis in the morning, the finals were in the afternoon. The semis, they gave us the list for the finals, and they're like, "You're gonna play the Mozart, the first movement of the Mozart Concerto," and we were like, "The whole thing?" And they're like, "Yes," and we were like, "With a cadenza?" And they were like, "Yes," and I was like, I did not prepare a cadenza because I was like, they're only gonna ask for the exposition. Like, what? Why would they? And so I ran home. And I like scribbled on a napkin and I was like, I'm going to do this and this. And I played it for my husband. I was like, what do you think? And he's like, that's pretty good. And I was like, okay. And so I was just like practicing about it. And then I came back and I was like, okay, I'm ready. I can do this. And then they're like, oh, just kidding. You're doing the exposition. Oh, no. And I was like, but everybody was in the same boat.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So actually, don't be lazy. Prepare more than you think that they're, because I was like, they're not going to. And then they almost did. But then when you get to that, when you get to play the pianist in the final round of a concerto, show your stuff. Be yourself, because it turns from an objective judging to a very subjective judging. And you want to be authentically you, because why would you even want to play in an orchestra where they don't like your natural playing?
Yeah.
So you might as well show it there. You're good enough to get there, obviously. They know that. Now it's just about the individuality. And you want to be and so that's where your artistry can come through. So that's my advice on auditions. I mean, it's not a cure-all. Everybody has different experiences. So, and I count myself extremely lucky. Like, again, I was just like, whatever, I'm not gonna, it's fine. But I just, I had a good read. I wasn't so hung up about it. And I just went in and tried to have as much fun as you can at an audition. And you meet other people at auditions too. And it's just fun to like see what other oboists are up to and, or other people in your instrument field. Cause you're going to see those people again. It's a small world. So don't, you do what you need to do to play well the audition, but don't be so unfriendly to other people there, be very, open and available to talk. Cause some oboists came up to me and was like, you're in WindSync. And I was like, yeah, so it's fine, I don't mind it at all. And it's fun to talk about it.
Yeah. So I'm wondering first, like, how were you sort of feeling through the 3 different rounds? And then did you have any sort of like game day preparations or like how you sort of got into like, I mean, I think it's really important. Like you weren't like saying this is the be all end all. Like you were pretty relaxed about it. And I think that's really important. But I mean, it's still an audition. Did you have any sort of
actually you need to, for at least a week, but preferably at least 2, eat healthily, well balanced. Like this is stupid to say, but like it really makes a difference. Like have a good diet, exercise, sleep well, like whatever you need to do, get adequate amount of sleep well and long if you can, because you want to be in your most naturally alert state. Like don't caffeinate yourself, but like your naturally alert state. I don't drink caffeine at all, actually. So that's not an issue, but some musicians, they do. And sometimes they're like, I can't drink caffeine when I do a performance because, the jitter is
too much.
So do what you need to do to prepare yourself. And that starts even way before your audition day. And then on the day of, don't be like, I'm going to take this magic. Like don't do anything different if you've already been having this routine for 2 weeks. It's just like any other day. And you want to try and make it as normal as possible for yourself, even though of course you're going to be nervous. So eat what you normally eat, drink lots of water, go to the thing, like pretend like you're just performing rather than auditioning. Because that was the advantage for me, is that since I've been professionally playing for so long, I'm so used to performing. I love performing. And auditions are so like, ugh. But if you treat it more like a performance, it's better for me at least. So there's no like game day, like, like if you make it different, then you're mentally making it different for you later on. So that's what I would.
Consistency.
Consistency.
I like that. That's good. And I think that's really important, because then I think that's helping you get into that mindset of like, this isn't something to get super stressed about. Like this isn't different. It's just another day in what I've already been doing and what I've been building up to.
Absolutely. Exactly. So Just normalize it.
Yeah. So, and each round was blind?
Each round was blind, yes.
So then how did it work out after? How did you find out that you won?
Oh, okay. So yeah, so there were 6 finalists, and we were all just hanging out in the backstage lounge area, chatting. And then they come in and they announce, "Oh, we have a winner," and they called the number, and it was my number, and I was like, "What?" Like, it was a visceral, like, I didn't mean to say that. I was just like, "Wow!" Like, I didn't expect that at all. And they also had a runner-up, and so I was just like, "That's crazy!" And then they took the winner and the runner-up up to meet the panel in the hall. So they took us up to the hall. And it was so funny because I already knew them all because I had been subbing with them. Yeah. And I was like, "Did you guys know it was me?" And they were like, "No, it's completely blind." And they were as shocked as I was. Wow. Yeah, because there were 60 people who auditioned for that. So I was just like, "There's no way." So I was like, yeah, so they announce your number and then they bring you up and then you can actually meet the panel. And it's like a really amazing feeling. Yeah. Because then I was just like, because I was like kind of in like this weird, and then I walked out and I called my husband and I was like, "I won," and he was like, "What?" And then I like was like, "Ooh," you know. So luckily I kept it together until after I'd met my future colleagues. But yeah, so it was really like a great feeling, and then playing with the orchestra too I'm ending the first season with them.
How soon after did you start playing with them?
Oh, that was the beginning of summer, so I didn't start until the fall.
Okay.
So I had the summer to kind of like work out, sign the contract and, do the scheduling of the season and stuff with WindSync's schedule and everything. And then playing with them this season, it's been wonderful. I mean, I like chamber music. I love chamber music, but I also really like orchestral playing. And when you get we did Electra this past fall. That was like crazy. And it was the reduced version, and there were still 120 people in the pit.
Oh, wow.
And then,
oh, my gosh.
I know, it was crazy. But when you have that many people together and you create this sound that you can't get in chamber music, and you have singers and you have like all this thing, I see why people say opera is the ultimate art form. Like, I see why. I don't necessarily like it's ultimate. Like, there's so many art forms that are, but the collaboration of so many different types of art is very apparent in opera. And it's so cool to be part of that. And the colleagues in the orchestra are all such nice people. Like, I felt so welcome. And they were all so encouraging. And they're just, the level of musicianship is just outstanding in that orchestra. And I just had so much fun this past year. And and I'm looking for, we have one more, we do the operas and the ballets. So we have one more ballet week. We just finished Oboe, actually. And we have one more ballet week with the New York City Ballet. And then the season is over, but then we start again in the fall. So it's been amazing.
Yeah. Did you ever sort of see yourself playing an opera, or had you always sort of just thought orchestra?
I just thought orchestra. I never thought opera specifically. In fact, I haven't really had a ton of experience playing opera. But the thing I like about opera is that it's kind of similar to chamber music because in orchestra, you can kind of predict what's going to happen. You cannot predict what's happening in opera. Like, they are doing crazy things on stage. Sometimes. And the conductor is like, they're beating, and like every beat can be a different tempo sometimes. Yeah. And you as a musician have to be on it, with the conductor. And the conductor's so important. Like, orchestral conductors are great. They're not always necessary, but like opera conductors are.
Extremely,
because you can't coordinate,
of course,
And everything is so nuanced and so like, wait, and here, and you have to be on it just like you are in chamber music. So I found that very fascinating for me and very stimulating for my brain. Yeah. So I'd only done opera like maybe 3 times or 4 times before I won this job. And every time I had done opera, I thought it was so fun because it was so like engaging to me as a musician. It was just like, you just stay activated the whole time. So,
That's amazing. I was going to ask if there was something that you picked up, the learning curve of joining the opera. I feel like you've already kind of answered it, but if there was anything else.
There is a learning curve. Cause I do, like, I'm used to playing in chamber music. So play like a soloist, you know. My position is assistant principal. So when I did play principal on a couple productions, and that was really fun, and I could, you know, but I also played second oboe, and I also played a lot of English horn this season, because we're actually having another audition for the second/English horn position next year, I believe. But since there's only two of us, I'm filling in a lot of that. So I had to learn very quickly. There are times for to be a soloist, and there are times to really be together. And even if your part is marked solo, if it's with somebody else, you have to really make sure that that is, you know, coordinated. I would say that the dynamics are super extreme. Like, I know they are extreme in chamber music too, but in the orchestra, like, they play so loud and so soft. It's really incredible to, like, kind of hear what other people are doing, because these other people in the orchestra have been there for like years and years and years. And so they're so experienced. Them watching and playing and coordinating their musicality and lining it up with what the beat is given and not making it sound jerky and awkward has been really eye-opening, because I've always just been like, well, I do my musical thing and it's fine, but I didn't have to coordinate it with like a conductor and a person on stage. And so learning how to do that from my colleagues was really awesome, actually. And so there is a little bit of a learning curve, but if you have those skills and you've built your fundamentals, you can adapt. So yeah.
Wow, amazing. This sounds really fun.
It's fun, yeah.
I guess now I'm just wondering, looking back at your career so far, if there is something that you would have maybe changed about it, or like a piece of advice you would give yourself for how you approached it or how you went about your career, and then also looking forward where you sort of see yourself going.
Right. So I guess one thing I would change.
That doesn't have to be.
I don't think I did everything perfectly. You know, there were obviously things that could have gone better. I don't know necessarily if I would have changed. Like, a lot of times people ask me if I would have maybe not done the dual degree. And I would say no, I would do it. I would do it again if given the choice.
Do you use that?
No, not really. I just like I like learning. So a lot of the podcasts I listen to actually have to do with just like learning things. And that biology thing, anytime there's anything about like nature and animals and whatever, because that was more my major, I'm always like, ooh, you know, like, or the history of Earth, or, you know, that kind of environmental stuff. I love learning about that. But no, I haven't used it professionally. But that experience is just so valuable in and of itself. I don't know if I would change anything necessarily. Looking forward to the future, though, like, I don't know if you even noticed, I actually am my old teacher, Mark Hill, is retiring. And so I'm actually taking his place at Maryland.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that's a different aspect of my career that I have not done before. So I did the chamber music, I did the orchestra, but now it's teaching at a university.
And will that be added into the fold?
Yes, that'll be added into the fold. So that's why I'm like, I gotta taper off other things. Like my own private teaching I've diminished quite a bit because I need to make room for Maryland. So I'm really looking forward to doing that kind of teaching. Like, I have a lot of experience teaching just privately, and WindSync does a lot of university residencies. So I've had a lot of experience teaching university level students as well. I mean, we even did a residency at Eastman, which is great. But having a studio of your own is going to be a little different. So again, learning curve, there's a lot of things in academia that are different that I need to learn. And I know that.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I had seen on Facebook that you announced that, and it's amazing. I can't believe I forgot to bring
no, it's totally fine. But when you were talking about the future, like, that's one of the things that I'm like,
coming up for you.
Because like I said, I love to learn. So when you're teaching, you are learning as well. And it's totally different than anything I've done from my career before. Well, not totally, but like, it is different.
Pretty different,
So I'm eager to learn about that and like eager to really like help because the teaching now, it's like the kids may or may not want to be a music major when they go to college, you know, but the kids who come, you know, to study it in college, they do want to be a musician. So really helping them in their career and getting them maybe to where I am, like, is really going to be kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like really excited.
Bringing it sort of full circle.
Yeah. And like thinking back on everything Mr. Killmer and Mark Hill and my high school teachers too, like Malcolm Smith, he was the principal of Indianapolis, like remembering all of that. My violin teachers too. Margaret Jones was my high school violin teacher. Like all of the things that they said, I'm now bringing back and being like, what can I do to help the next generation? You know, it's going to be really fun.
Yeah. So. Could you talk some about how that came about? How you even have you thought about teaching at a university?
Oh, totally.
And
Yes.
How that
that was actually one of my goals. I was like, since a couple years ago, I was just kind of like thinking, I was like, what would be really ideal is just to like be performing. I've been performing, but I would love to like teach, you know, like at a high level. And so I was thinking about it, and I was like, kind of, you know, and then I heard that my old teacher, Mark Hill, is retiring in a few years. So that's what kind of planted in my mind. I was like, maybe I should try and get his job. Well, I mean, I wasn't, you know, scheming like that.
Right.
But I was just kind of like, oh, you know, I called him up and I was like, hey, let's get dinner together to catch up. And also congratulations on, you know, you're going to be retiring soon. Like, that's amazing. You know, you've had such a long and amazing career. So we caught up, you know, and I was telling him about all my stuff, and he was like, yeah. And like, he didn't say anything, but I was just kind of maybe planting the seed a little bit. I didn't say anything about like, hey, what are you know? And then as I just focused on my own career, WindSync winning the opera job, then actually Mark approached me and was like, hey, you know, since I'm retiring soon, you know, I've actually like put your name into the list of candidates for the position. And I was like, really? I was like, because I wasn't like, can you like consider me? Like he told me. And I think it was mostly because you just concentrate on making yourself the best you can be. Other people will see it. Like you don't have to be so brazen. And I mean, some people are really good networkers. I don't think I really am. I just kind of portray myself as a solid, consistent, you know, reliable person, an artist as well. And people notice it. And then you just occasionally, like you genuinely want to be in touch with somebody for that relationship, not because of what you can get from it.
Right.
Like I love keeping in touch with Killmer and Mark because I just like them as people and they like me as a person. So I'm constantly like, let's catch up. Like I even like my husband does tennis and so does Mark. So I was like, you guys do play tennis and like, you know, just nothing to do with music, that kind of thing. You know, if you're genuine in how you want to like connect with someone, then they also feel like that's a lot better reason to talk to somebody than trying to get something from them. That would come naturally, like if you have set yourself up in a certain way. So they said I was being considered, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. So I got in contact with the head of the department, which is the flute professor, and she had me come in to do observed teaching. So I did a private lesson. I also did a studio class. And you know, and I've done lots of those before, so I was just kind of like myself. And Mark was there, and she was there, and then the student professor came and observed and everything. And I was just like myself again. Like when you're teaching, everybody has a different teaching style. Don't try to do something that you're not going to actually offer. So I was just being myself, you know, and listening and giving feedback and basically doing a master class. And it was really fun. And then actually it kind of became a whirlwind. Like just a few days after that, the flute professor called me and was like, we loved like what we saw, we want to hire you. And I was like,
gosh, wow.
I was like, oh my goodness. I was expecting it to be like a longer process. But the reason is because it's kind of late in the year. This was back in April, and a lot of people had already auditioned and committed to schools. And so the recruitment aspect of it was like very dire. Because, you know, I get it. People don't want to commit to a school if they don't know who's going to teach there. So they were like, yes, can you start recruiting for this? We have GA positions available. And I was like, when? Okay. And I was like, when do I really, isn't there deadlines? And they're like, yeah, if you could do it by like early May, that'd be amazing. And I was like, so I like spent 2 weeks emailing literally every oboe professor I've ever met in my entire life, also ones I hadn't met. And I called Mr. Killmer, I called a bunch of people, and luckily I managed to get 2 people to come.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm really excited because one is a Killmer student and one is a student of Sherry Seiler, who is the assistant principal of the New York Phil.
Wow.
Because I met her at IDRS, the International Delivery Conference this past summer, and she's a big fan of WindSync. So you build these connections that you have from earlier in your career, like they come back. They really come back. And that helped me, and also just emailing all the oboe professors. It was so good to hear from them and catch up with a lot of them too.
And maintain that connection.
Maintain the connection. And even if they're like, oh, my students already accepted other things. And I was like, no worries.
Yeah.
I was like, hopefully I can send you some students, but it's like a really, music is so competitive, but at the same time, it's a big family as well. And you can really have so many cool connections all over the place from music. And that's just awesome.
Yeah. So had you even officially applied for the position, or what?
They had a short list. So it's not so this is kind of getting in the weeds, but it's not a tenure track position. So if they open it up to be tenure track, it would be a national search.
I see.
But since it's not, they had their short list of candidates.
I see.
And I was on the short list. And there were several other people.
And your audition essentially was
the observed teaching. And they had my resume as well. And I have plenty of my playing online, so they're able, and also it's kind of cool too because I'm an alum and they're I'm not exactly sure how that process all worked out. I just know that there was a short list. And so it wasn't just they just handed it to me.
No,
they were just kind of there was a process that had happened.
Well, and it's also even though it wasn't specifically for this application, all of the work you've done in your whole career is leading up to this moment and contributing to opening these opportunities for you in the first place. Right,
yeah. And just, like I said, establishing your reputation. And I think it was really smart of me to stay in the DC area after graduating from Maryland. And not everybody has that opportunity to stay in the same city that you went to school in. Because Mark Hill helped me so much kickstart my professional career because of the connections he had here. So it is helpful, but it's possible to do it other ways too. So,
Wow. Yeah. I think it's just been really inspiring to hear. I feel like you're very humble about all of your successes, but I just feel like I get the sense that you've really put yourself out there and you've been really proactive in taking every advantage and every opportunity that you have and then seeing later how those sort of come back and
help you out.
And help you out and impact your career when you wouldn't have even known that at the start. These relationships that you fostered and these connections that you've built have then opened up these doors.
Oh, totally.
And
so you start it all when you're a student. It's really cool, and it is a lot of luck as well. There's no one way to do it. And but the most you can do is how you can present yourself and change yourself and interact with people yourself. You can't be, well, if they did this or if they blah, blah. No. If you hold yourself up to that standard, then I feel like a lot of times it works out for people. And even if that means changing your career. Because some people are so much happier doing something else. Because it's not like you're a failure at music. You're still an amazing musician. But sometimes it just doesn't make you happy anymore. And I have some colleagues, and friends who went to Eastman, one of the best music schools, and they're not doing music anymore, but they're so much happier. It's not for everyone. And it by no means that you're a failure. There's no such thing. So you be the best you, and if that leads you to be a musician or to not be a musician, you should let yourself do that. Don't have this conception in your mind that, if I change career for music, I fail. No, not at all. So more successful, honestly, you make more money. But you just find what works for you, and don't try to fit don't try to fit yourself into some mold that doesn't work. And don't try to be like, that mold should fit me. Like, you have to find your own. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. I thought, just to finish off, it would be fun, hopefully, to do a sort of rapid fire section.
Go for it.
So just like whatever pops into your head. It can be whatever you feel in this moment. It doesn't mean you're subscribing to it for the rest of your life.
Oh no, I have to be good. No, I'm just kidding.
So just how you're feeling today.
Okay, sounds good.
What would you say is who would you say is your favorite composer?
Debussy.
Debussy, okay. And your favorite piece of classical music?
La Mer. That's what
Makes sense.
Yeah, I love that piece so much.
Amazing. Favorite movie soundtrack?
Ooh, I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna say Coco.
Coco.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's so many good ones, but Coco is like, blows my mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to go listen to that.
It's so good. Oh my gosh. Yeah. The guitar. Oh my
It
gosh.
is good.
It's
yeah,
so good.
Yeah. Fun times. What genre of music do you listen to most of the time? Like when you're by yourself? For fun?
Oh, for fun. I actually like listening to like alternative rock. I know. Actually, when I was in high school, I was a drummer in a rock band.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But it went, yeah.
Your whole career could have turned out so differently.
It's so weird, but it's so fun. I kind of like listening to that kind of loud kind of stuff.
Pumps you up?
Yeah. Like, I was quote unquote kind of goth when I was in high school as well. So that kind of music, like dark, like kind of music, every once in a while I'm just like, yeah, let's go. But
great. Amazing. What are you currently reading?
What am I reading? I'm not actually reading that much. I'm mostly listening. I found that I'm more of an oral learner.
Audiobooks? Or
podcasts, stuff. So I've actually gotten really into true crime.
Oh,
so I've been listening.
I'm seeing another side of Emily right now.
Yeah, so I've been listening to a lot of Crime Junkie.
Okay.
But reading is like, I mean, I enjoy reading, but it's I don't absorb as well when I'm reading. So if I do read a book, I often do the audio.
Yeah.
The most recent one that I read, is My Brilliant Friend. Do you know that book? It's like an Italian. Oh, it's so good, but I listened to that on audiobook. Really, really good book.
I'll look it up. My Italian friend.
No, My Brilliant Friend.
Oh, My Brilliant Friend. Why did I say that?
No, because it's an Italian. It's set in Italy, and it's an Italian writer and stuff. So yeah.
Okay, got it.
Great book.
And what's the last thing you listened to? Was it rock?
No, it was actually this ballet music that I'm preparing for this next week.
Nice.
So we're doing, what are we doing? Oh, we're doing, there's a saxophone concerto that was written last year.
Oh, cool. For ballet.
They're doing it's more interpretive, modern ballet.
Okay.
We're also doing Debussy Prelude to Happy Fawn, and we're doing some Donizetti variations as well.
Wonderful.
So I've been listening to a lot of that.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Who's a musician you really admire?
Oh, I mean, of course, Mr. Killmer.
Yeah.
He's amazing. I would also say my other favorite oboist would probably be Albrecht Meyer, just because he's the principal of Berlin, and he's amazing. He has such a soulful, so musical, so emotes musicality, and a lot of some orchestral playing people can be in a box, and he's not. He plays like a soloist, and I'm just that's so good.
Amazing. And then if there was any sort of resource, book, movie, song, podcast that you would recommend that you feel like someone needs to listen to this right now, or someone needs to consume this right now, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I feel right now, I mean, for fun, I highly I just finished watching Beef.
Oh, what is that?
It's a Netflix show.
Okay.
It's Ali Wong, the comedian Ali Wong.
Yeah.
And she, it was really good. It gets really trippy at the end, but it was really good.
Okay.
And it actually kind of made me think about how I interact with people. It's hilarious. And it's meaningful, and it's so well made, and it makes you think. And so I would recommend that. I know it's kind of weird and funny,
anything.
but that was a really, really great show, I thought.
Cool. Okay,
Beef, yeah.
Okay.
And it's funny.
Good to know. Amazing. Well, that's all my
okay, great.
questions. If there's just any last piece of advice or just something you want to leave our listeners with, what would it be?
I mean, I feel like I've said most of what I think. My main thing is don't take things so seriously. I think that's the main. I mean, obviously you want to be disciplined. You want to take things seriously. But if you do it too much, it can actually hinder you. And be your authentic self. And that will make your music more unique and just better. Because the more different voices we can hear in music, the better we all get. And that actually kind of goes for life too. Just like everybody's opinions matters. Like be yourself and respect how other people play music or their opinions too. Because it really informs all of us to become better ourselves.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I love that. I think that's really important. And I feel like you've shared so much wisdom and really valuable advice throughout this whole podcast. I think it'll be really helpful for a lot of people. So.
I hope so.
Thanks so much. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm excited for you and all that's
thank you. Me too.
Thank you. Yay. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Orchestrating Your Career podcast, and a big thanks to Emily for sharing her story and so much actionable advice. The resources mentioned in this episode and where you can connect with Emily are all linked below. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms, as well as get more frequent updates on Instagram. To watch videos of all the episodes and get extra behind-the-scenes content, then check out the YouTube channel Orchestrating Your Career. Subscribe so you don't miss anything, and look out for new episodes on the 1st and 15th of every month. Next episode's conversation will be with Dawn Hoffman, member of the 1st clarinet section with the United States Army Concert Band, as well as a pianist and piano accompanist. Until next time, I'll let Emily's quartet performance finish out the episode, so take it away, Emily.